Welcome to Real Talk, sponsored by Travel Business Mastermind. In this episode, we're going to be talking about your relationship with money. As an entrepreneur, it is so important that you understand what motivates you. What are your triggers when it comes to the fees that you charge, to the excitement you have about being paid, and keeping an eye on your finances. To guide us through this discussion, we've brought Brian Baird, a performance strategist who works mostly with entrepreneurs, to talk with us about what he's learned working with business owners and individuals like you. So drop your guard, break down the walls, and let's get to the heart of your relationship with money on Real Talk. Okay. So welcome to another Real Talk here at Travel Business Mastermind. We are live today talking about one of the most difficult conversations most people have. In fact, I think it is quite significant that when Brian, about a month ago, posted on his page, asking people this very question that we're going to be discussing today, 290 comments. Now, some of that was Brian talking back and forth, but Brian, easily over 100 people responded, right?
Yeah, probably closer to 150 people.
Yeah.
The conversations that I put out there on the internet are thought experiences. I'm looking to, a lot of people put like some fairly innocent stuff out there, and there's a lot of buy-in on like what you watch for TV or whatever the case may be.
Right.
I just like it to take it another level where we just get a chance to maybe be a little bit more raw about who we are as people without kind of opening up too much of our wardrobe to do that. So the question was, what is your relationship with money? And a lot of people put down in a very heartfelt way, I don't have a good relationship with money. Other people will talk about how they don't need money or whatever the case may be. And interestingly, all of those things have their perspective and value, and they're very real. I happen to think that was one of my favorite interactions with people, was talking about that engagement that we have with money.
The reason why Brian Baird poses intelligent conversations like this, other than the fact that he is a person who's intrigued by human nature, is Brian is a performance specialist. He consults with individuals, he consults with entrepreneurs about the wide variety of things that impact our performance. And for anybody out there, predominantly the people I speak to are entrepreneurs. What we all know is that our personal relationship with our business is very much tied into our personality and who and what we are. And so, Brian has been working with professionals. How many years now, Brian, have you been at this endeavor?
Well, it depends on how we look at it. Technically, I've been a study of human nature since I was very young. In terms of the iteration of my life where I'm spending time working on performance strategies or in helping people transform their energy. Actually, I liken it from the ideas is that this idea of putting your emotion into your business, and I'm talking about positive emotions, is it's not so new. It's just that in the current iteration, using my community called $1 Million Feeling, it's only a couple of years now. Putting emotion into your business, we all would say, well, it could be blood, sweat, and tears or things like that. I'm really talking about bringing heart into your business. Today, we need so much. We need so much to trust who we are going to work with. And there are so many people who are just out there for the transaction, and we sense that. It's very easy for human beings to sense that, and so we've become very untrusting.
Oh yes.
As a society, we've become very untrusting. I could have the greatest thing since sliced bread, and if I don't give two things, a heart, I'm going to just call it heart-based, a heart-based opportunity to engage, a heart-based experience, so to speak, excuse me, and I should say also something that contributes back to my life in some way that makes me feel good. And and in some ways that's always been the truth. I mean, it's not like I didn't, but even impulse buyers, by the way, when they are getting something from an impulse purchase, they're doing it because they're feeding their heart. They're looking to fill a hole, perhaps, if they're like one of those chronic shoppers, or that's something that will make them feel good at the moment, and they will do that. So even the impulse buyers still need some level of trust, and they need to come out of it with something that makes them feel right about their selection.
I've always been taught that since I think college, when I took some economics courses in college, is that we like to think that we are rational purchasers of things, but our spending habits are very emotional behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And as entrepreneurs, we're selling out to people, marketing to people. We're creating a brand, our personal brand that attracts clients to us. And there's money involved in that transaction, of course. So that whole effort is very, very personal. And I feel like everything is rooted back to our childhood. I feel like so much of who we are today, including our relationship with money, is tied into our past, and usually our deep past. When you asked that question on your Facebook page, were you thinking you were going to be hearing some really deeply seated revelations from people about, where their personal relationship with money comes from?
It's something that I say in my head, no, I wouldn't have been sure. It's just in my heart, I felt very good about the question. So when I'm asking questions of people who are in my personal space or community, I am absolutely, the questions almost come to me, or through me, I should say, not from me. So what's happening is that when I'm putting the question out there, I'm pretty confident there will be engagement just because the question was meant to be put out there. I've had other questions, as you know, besides talking about money.
Yes.
And each one of the questions gets fairly well lit up. And I'm very excited to have those things, because I think each time we all contribute to this kind of discussion, we raise the entire energy of humanity, or of the planet, if you want to call it that. So, and it's something I think we really, really need our civilization has made so much progress, and in recent years, even technologically, done some amazing things using technology to increase the caliber of our lifetime at a physical level. One of the things that seems to be kind of going a little bit backwards right now is there's a lot of fear, a lot of mistrust, a lot of things might be at a large level we'll just call non-positive. And so by asking these kinds of questions, we get these amazing kinds of engagements. And the fact is, since we're talking about money here, you are absolutely right about the things that come from our childhood. Let me just offer you this. There's some sort of thing is we operate, well, a lot of our decision is operated not in what we're going to get, but what we're going to avoid. So think about this. Think about limiting beliefs, right? The root of all evil is, what is it? The root of all evil is?
The love of
Well,
money.
no, but I'm asking you, what do we commonly have in our head? The root of all evil is money, right?
No,
I know that if you're going to reference the scripture of some kind, it's going to be the love of
money. Yes.
Money. The love of money causes that evil.
Right.
And what that's really saying is that, and it really is going to feed something I'm about to say, which is a truth. It's not money that's the issue, although we carry around this energy that money causes challenges, that it could affect who we are. I used to think that if I had a lot of money, I would just be a jerk. Because suddenly I could be one of those people at the stores who's buying stuff and they're very entitled because they suddenly have money, and you'll see this. You'll see people who acquire money and they become jerks.
Right.
So one of my limiting beliefs, having seen that so many times, is that if I had a lot of money, I'd be a jerk. And there's room for that possibility if we aren't being authentic. We're really letting money become part of our image and who we think we are.
Right.
So, and, so what other things do we have with, phrases that might be limiting beliefs that are stuck in our head, right? So we had money of, or the love of money is the root of all evil. What else do you have that you might have heard where, with money that could be rolling around in there?
Money doesn't solve every problem.
Or how about money doesn't buy happiness?
That's the one I was looking for. Thank you.
So there's a truism to it, and there's a falsehood to that statement, in the sense that it depends on where the money comes from. So if I start a business, or I'm operating a business, and the only reason why I'm doing the business is for the money, I'm falling into those patterns of, I'm not being authentic, I'm not fulfilling things, I may not even have a passionate contract with what brings in the money. I might be just doing it for conveniences and things like that. Our life isn't meant to always be convenient. I mean, it's nice to have it once in a while, comfort, convenient, but we don't learn, and we don't really learn those happy spaces we need to learn about are really learned from being uncomfortable. So, and I'm not suggesting that we should be poor to be uncomfortable. That's not what it's all about. The idea, though, is that if I'm pursuing money, and that's the reason why I'm doing this, if I'm pursuing money directly, then I've put the cart before the horse energetically. Money, if you want, I will offer this as my opinion, although I think it's a verifiable, evidence-based fact, that money that brings you happiness is the money that's a byproduct of bringing service and value to others, not the other way around. Like, if you're looking for money, you don't decide to just become service and value oriented. That's not even authentic. So we take our energy and we put it into being authentically there in a course of service and providing value to others, and then money is the exchange for that. Then everything falls into place. We give results to the party we're serving. We give results to ourselves, which some of it is monetary or financial. And then everybody has an exchange with giving and receiving, and everybody has an exchange with happiness or joy that comes out of this. This is the space where we all thrive, is when we are in service to others and receiving from others. So if I'm giving you service, Rich, and you refuse my service, then my gift is bounced, and I don't actually get the gift of giving. So there's a lot of power in this concept of looking at money as a measure of how well we are engaging our service and value provisions, and how authentically we lean in on those things. If I'm artificially trying to be a service provider, or artificially trying to provide value just so I can have the money, I've kind of changed the energy of this discourse, and it's not sustainable. You could do it for a while. I could create money out of service thoughts and not be authentic about my service-oriented behavior. It just won't last.
So as you talk about that balance between what a person gets out of a transaction, you're right. There's so much of us just being authentic that is critical to a person's success. If you're putting on a face and just delivering a transactional service, you sell a product and people come into your store and they really don't grab anything personally from you. I get all of that. But how do you feel a business owner incorporates that desire for success attached to money? Do you feel that it's critical that a person starts from this authentic place first, and then the money will come? Or, and I'm going to explore this a little bit later, hopefully you can even use me as a subject, or do you feel that authenticity won't work if a person doesn't have a good relationship in their own heart with the concept that I should be paid handsomely for what I do, and I should not feel bad about that?
Yes, you should be paid handsomely or handsomely enough for what you do without any reservations or sense of guilt about taking money for the transaction. So here's the thing. We all know people who make money without heart. There are people out there who do that. They're driven at a very, very intense level to be kind of winner take all in their posture. And I will say, show me one of those people and I'll show you somebody who's manifestly unhappy under the hood, because that winner take all thing is, it's not connecting to people. And ultimately at the bottom of everything we do, it's in our relationships that we end up having the most value. And so if our dollar driven behavior supersedes our relationship driven behavior, we lose every time. And short bursts, we might be happy with the kinds of byproducts that money brings us. I can buy the super beach house or buy the Caribbean island, or I could take a trip around the world and stay in 4 diamond facilities and things like that. And since we'll talk about travel in this context as long as we're here. So the idea here is that what do you want? Is all you want is money? Or do you really want, which is love, happiness, peace of mind, rest, joy, fulfillment, satisfaction? What do you really want out of life? And so if money is your only driver, you can succeed just making money. And that's because you can drive towards that goal, except you leave all that other stuff on the table. So you point out the word is harmony, right? We want to have money, which sustains our ability to do things that may be lifestyle oriented, or for that matter, support other parts of our service model. Okay, if I had a lot of money in the terms of billions, I would be doing a great deal of contribution to society with the billions. I'd be looking for ways to make that money, culture that money or curate that money into something that raises the bar on humanity. And I'll get the billions later. We'll talk about that another time. So in the course of this is the money that I make today, I don't lose sleep over. I don't feel guilty about or anything like that, because I'm first stepping into a place of service. And that's my mission in life, by the way, is like for the remaining time on that I have on this planet, whether it's 20 years, 40 years, or 60 years or more, my mission has been for quite a while now is to touch someplace I'm just gonna pick a number that may sound lofty to you, but it's very real to me, is somehow or other touch 1 billion people with my messaging and the elements of what can be bringing them real value in their lives. It doesn't mean I'm personally handshaking 1 billion people. It just by my body of work hopefully will carry itself. And inside of that is like this discussion we're having about money. And that is that if I'm looking to if the reason why I want to touch 1 billion people is because I want to make $10 billion, and that's the only reason, it's possible I could do that. I'll probably leave the planet fairly unhappy. The odds of me leaving the planet being a sense of fulfillment, maybe even spiritual connectivity or whatever the case may be, is very low in my estimation. In my experience, when I've met people who are dollar driven only, they are largely hard to work with, because they are so aggressive. And then the second part of it is that they tend to be very unhappy people.
So what do you think their relationship with money is?
Well,
what's your?
It's strictly a relationship with money, and you can't take it with you, and you can't have an intellectual or spiritual or emotional conversation with money.
But when you say they have a relationship with money, is it a negative relationship? Is it a positive relationship? How would you describe?
I would say it's a limiting relationship. Depends on what you want in our life. If all you care about is money, you can do that. So that's your relationship with money, is money. That may be your only relationship, is money. Everybody else, human beings you're dealing with, even your dog,
I guess I'm not.
They may not. Okay, go ahead.
I guess I'm not following you, because we all have a relationship with money. Either, and I hate using negative and positive, but I'm trying to think of another way to define this.
Let's talk about relationships with people for a second. This might make it clearer.
Okay.
If I have a relationship with somebody and I make them the full center of all of my attention, what does that do to my relationship with others?
I'm going to leave that to you to answer.
Well, what's your gut tell you?
I'm not sure, because I still don't know that.
So if I give all of my attention, let's just say I bring somebody and I have somebody come into my life and I give them 100% of my attention. What happens to my relationship with my daughter? What happens to my relationship with my peers? What happens to my relationship with everything else? I'm now giving all of my attention and focus to just that one party.
Well, I understand your hypothesis or your scenario. What I'm trying to get at, I guess, is let's take that situation you just described. There would be a reason why that person's relationship is so encompassing for let's call them the protagonist in this scenario. There's a reason why that person's 100% occupied with this person. It's because they have a relationship, meaning the protagonist has a relationship with that need that person's fulfilling. And
okay,
I think that's what I'm trying to discern.
Yeah, so let's go deep on this. Let's really go deep on this. When we are living an authentic life, we very often have figured out a way to be whole. We have a mechanism for being whole. The course of my work is about helping people be whole. It's mentally, physically, and even aspect of it is even spiritual. Even though I don't consider myself a spiritual leader, I do think some of my work connects people to a spiritual construct. So, so inside of that thing is if I'm whole, things fall into place very readily. My relationship with money is whatever it needs or I want it to be relative to my being whole.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying putting money first could be a huge challenge. So when you ask is if somebody has an exclusive relationship with money, is it negative? And I say, well, what do they want? If all they cared about was money, and I'm not here to judge, if all they cared about was money, is it negative or positive if they've achieved these huge goals that involve money?
I don't know. I think of Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
And the man has more money than he'll ever need.
Absolutely.
And even after splitting half of it with his now ex-wife, I wonder what caused him to be so focused on having billions of dollars versus hundreds of millions, because he could set up Amazon in a way that instead of him having whatever he's worth these days, 45, 50 billion dollars, he could say, you know what? I'm going to set up my business so that I never have more than $1 billion. And that other 49 billion will be reinvested in things the way, for example, Bill and Melinda Gates are reinvesting in the world now that they've got so much money.
Yep.
But yet he seems to have a relationship with money that makes that liquid asset so important to him.
So let's go back to what I was saying before in terms of being whole and authentic. And I want to be a little cautious with this thing because my measure of authentic is that you are indeed whole and happy.
Right.
So and that you are not carrying with you other people's stories as dominant forces in your life. And that's one of the challenges that we have as human beings, is that we have these dominant stories that aren't ours. They were handed to us by our parents or past generations in our family that maybe messaging came through. How many people do you know who are a doctor because their parents told them they had to be a doctor? So there's these stories that happen, and I've met people who are doctors who were told to be doctors by their family, and they're miserable because that's not what they wanted to be a clarinetist, or they wanted to be an artist, or they wanted to open up a construction company, or whatever their passions were. So the thing is that when you see somebody who's driven primarily by money and the power that goes with money, very often what they're doing is they're filling a hole. They haven't reached their constructive, powerful inner self with any kind of harmony. It's pretty much externally induced energy to bring in all these things, and they're kind of pulling it in. They're using all of their life energy to pull this stuff in. And I kind of look into the ideas is when you look at the divorce that Jeff and I want to be careful because we have these elements of things we could do that are more of judgment and less of discernment. So I'm just going to ask questions sometimes of these things. Is like, yes, he split his wealth that he had primarily earned with his now ex-wife, she started making contributions. She started donating money to causes and experiences that were raising the vibration of the planet. I'm not suggesting that Jeff never will or is not interested in this. Currently, though, he's been very focused on building this empire, and I don't dispute his rightness or wrongness to this. This is what serves him. The thing is that you have to decide what your relationship with money is. It's not a positive or negative thing. You have to decide whether or not it's serving who you really are.
Right.
And if you're using the empire building model as a way of medicating against not dealing with who you really are, you need to deal with that at some point along the way. And whether Jeff does or doesn't, it's up to him.
Right.
So I look at the idea that if his ex-wife is now taking the money and putting in many ways into service, that may tell you a little bit about why they got divorced, because they're on two different places.
Maybe I only know a little bit about the man.
And we're all outsiders looking in on this, but looking at the idea is that she's already been making contributions to some amazing things, and he has some elements of what this is showing up in his company profile, like I don't know how much of it's real and how much of it's true service, but some things about trying to make it the concept of having employees having a better life too. Right. I've met a lot of people who work for Amazon who have worked themselves to the bone. And so I don't know if they've done that because that's what's on them, or if they've done that because the company is extracting the blood of their employees. I don't really know. I can only guess based on what I'm seeing and hearing from others. So the point we're making here is, what is your relationship with money? It's really, what do you want it to be? Do you want it to be one that is a byproduct of things that help everybody and yourself, or do you want it to be the reason?
Right.
So, and neither one is necessarily negative. I'll use the word non-positive usually. Right. So neither one of them is necessarily non-positive or whatever. My view is, focus on being the best person you are. Focus on showing up for service. Focus on showing up and providing value out of that service, and let the money fall into place. Mm-hmm. And the more you're able to do that, the more money will fall into place. It's a byproduct. Okay. I believe the universe will take care of you, so to speak. Just follow. I think it was Voltaire who said, "Do what you love, and the money will follow." I'm paraphrasing it, but
But let's get back to the average person. And there were 150, I would say, average people. They weren't Jeff Bezos responding to your post.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine that most of those people represent the people that I have as my clients, my sales prospects, the people I deal with on a regular basis. They are average Joes and Janes,
mm-hmm.
But they come from places where they may have had something that caused them to have a relationship with money. Because what I find in my industry is so many people who don't feel like they're worth the fee that they should be charging their clients. They struggle with putting a number out there on their website that someone can find as they're searching for their service and say, wow, you charge $200 an hour, or $500 for a project management fee or something. So they're amongst my retinue, the people that I work with, I see a reluctance to put themselves out there boldly for a fee that seemingly is commensurate with the service they provide. Is that an indication would you suggest that maybe that's an indication that so many of us have a self-worth issue?
Well, that goes back to, I will say this, every human being has value. So if they have a self-worth issue, which many of us do, I've been through that journey myself. I've had that happen to me, even though I was a little bit more Jeff Bezos. I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a story here, and then we'll get back to this thing. My early years on this planet were more like Jeff Bezos. I managed my image. I was managing my money. I've made, and sometimes I want to say spent, but it's technically lost, millions. So, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and I've been doing this for over 4 decades. So, in the course of actually being a business person, I know how to make money, and I know, what money can do for you, and I know what the power of money is, and I know all those other things. And one of the reasons why I was so busy curating my image and building the reason for building companies was it was filling a hole. The reason for filling the holes is what made me look the way I wanted to look, because I hadn't, my inside of me wasn't given much props, so to speak. Like my childhood was such that it left me with this rocky internal core. So it wasn't until I spent my energy rebuilding the inside of me, so it actually balanced or harmonized with the outside of me, that things turned out to be much more effective. And inside of that is you find real worth, not pretend self-worth, but real self-worth. And it doesn't mean you can, if you have low self-worth, you can't charge more. But very often, if you have low self-worth, one of the things you do is you sabotage your opportunities because you feel you need to be punished. There's an underlying the hood. If I take money for this, then I don't deserve it. Then I'm guilty of something and I should be punished. So it gets really challenging when our relationship with money is tied to self-worth. My case, I made more money because it reinforced a sense of image-based value of who I was, what I was, as opposed to truly focusing on the inside of who I am. And then there was nothing about service in my model. So in my model, it was, well, there was about service. It was service to self. It wasn't about serving to others. Now, I've always had a little bit of the giving thing, but a lot of that giving thing that was not for me was really about furthering my image. So it really was an artificial. This is where I come up with the statement I said in the beginning of our discussion is that if you're giving of yourself in order just to have more money, it's artificial. It's not authentic. You're doing something to fill a hole. You're doing something. The hole in me was, I didn't have that inside. So I needed to create my sense of happiness or, well, self-image. Instead of confidently resting in who I am, I was masking self-worth issues. I was masking doubts. I was masking all those things by building all these companies that I had, and then ultimately selling them or destroying them, or some of them failed, many of them were successful. So, all of that though, but I was so rested in that outside version of who I was that I didn't have an opportunity to really get in touch with the inside of who I was. And inside of this thing, so this is why when you say, what's your relationship with money? It doesn't mean, we all have a relationship with money.
Right.
So what we're really asking is, what is your relationship, period, with yourself, with the universe or God? What's your relationship with others around you? What value are you placing on those things, and where are you going? And if the most important value we need to really look at is do we have that kind of self-relationship where we recognize that I can say to you, Rich, even let's just say you have a self-worth issue, and I can say to you, Rich, you're as valuable as everybody and anybody on this planet. But if you have a self-worth issue, you're likely to undercut that statement because that's where you rest in your energy. So what is your relationship with money? It should be what is your relationship with yourself and others?
Correct.
Because the money is a byproduct. The money that makes you happy. I want to just put this in perspective. The relationship with money, which we all have, how much or how little is not necessarily a measure of the quality of our lives. I've met people who are fairly mundane stations in life, who are the most happy and brilliant and wise people and full of love and kinds of power that you could never get from somebody who is just a multi-billionaire for the sake of money. Their power is more political and economic, and then they have this power to engage human beings and do something remarkable with their words and their heart. So the amount of money you have is really irrelevant in this discussion in terms of what your relationship with money is, because some of us need a lot for whatever reason, and some of us need very little for other reasons. And I think you can be a whole person and have both.
I guess, in some ways I feel like I'm not sort of being clear, because when I think of the clients that I have, I'm seeing people who are very service oriented. They believe that they are exceptional at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They love doing what they do, especially people who are travel advisors, people who try to help curate vacations. for individuals, families. They are, it's the meaning of their existence, and they will do things and put themselves in situations that, a lot of people in other industries would never do because they're not as dedicated as these people are to pleasing their clients.
Okay.
Yet they struggle with the concept of charging fees for what they do. So in the travel industry, if you're a seller of travel, there's a bunch of different models, but there are those people who say, look, I do get commissions when I sell a cruise ship, but the bulk of my revenue needs to come from fees I charge my clients. This way that my clients know that I'm wholly dedicated to them, committed to them, not the supplier who's paying me the commission. And then there's some hybrids in the middle where they charge certain kinds of fees. They're, almost fees to reduce behavior by their clients. Oh my God, if they're going to cancel a flight, I'm going to have to charge them $50 to cancel that flight because I need, I'm not going to get paid for canceling that. So they attach fees in that way. Or some will charge a fee up front and say, look, if you book with me, I will take that amount and that'll be a deposit towards your actual trip payment, so that I'm kind of not charging you a fee, but if you walk away, I am. So it's an incentive for you to continue to book with me. And then there are other people who strictly get commissions. They won't charge a fee and they fret over it because they're afraid that that consumer will say to them, I'll just go to Expedia then. And what I've always said to people who are having that internal debate with themselves is that maybe you need to let those people go to Expedia. They're not your right client. They don't appreciate you. They don't see you the way they should see you. I mean, I've never had an attorney. I don't know about you, Brian. Have you ever had an attorney give you their services for free?
Well, I avoid them at all costs, but
We all do.
So let's go ahead and dive in on what you just said, because there's so much interesting and valuable discussion point in there. We ask, what if I'm really all in on providing service and I'm not so all in on charging for my time, and so I'm looking for the luck of commissions to pay my bills. Now, if I'm really good at that all-in service model and I get a lot of commissions, I guess I can do all right, right? So, and to your point, is there may be some ancillary activities that are worth charging fees for. For me to give you my undivided attention, I may need to charge money to you so that I am not ingratiating myself everywhere else for commissions. I could be spreading myself thin, and everybody loses if something doesn't go quite right, because I was so thin, I didn't give the proper attention, and I didn't want to charge because I was afraid of something. And I want to focus on that word afraid. So maybe I don't want to charge because I'm afraid they're going to go to Wikipedia. Okay. So
Expedia. Wikipedia doesn't book travel.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I heard Expedia, and for whatever reason. So So I'm afraid they're going to go to Expedia or Kayak or any one of these other online institutions, and then the word fear has shown up in this discussion. So what am I afraid of? Exactly. I'm afraid they're going to walk away at the surface, but what am I really afraid of? I'm afraid that my worth, the worth that I should see for myself, isn't really worth what it is, and that person is just going to walk away. So we're dealing with all kinds of energies here: fear of rejection, fear of dealing with our worthiness issues, there's a whole bunch of things that are going on in here. And the idea is that maybe to make my life simpler, my service model might very well be just to lean in on being a commission-based only person. So that might be something I can do for simplicity's sake, but it may not be very much money in order to sustain who I am as a person. So here I have this passion of serving other people, and I may not be able to build a retirement portfolio, or there may be a whole lot of other things here. And that kind of service is more likely that I'm doing it to fill a hole, and not just to serve them, but to also make sure that I'm taking care of something inside of me that makes me either a people pleaser or maybe I'm medicating or filling a hole by virtue of providing service to others, so I don't have to provide service to myself. That's the way I really look at this. So when you go back to my point from before, is your relationship with money, we all have it. What degree of that is and what the value of that is really depends on our internal compasses and value sets. The big question here is am I happy? Am I happy doing what I'm doing? Do I have enough because I'm doing what I'm doing? And I mean, maybe, or do I have more? I mean, there's no reason in my mind why somebody can't be in the travel business and go past sustenance, that they could actually someplace along the way accrue what they need to accrue so that they could actually buy their own retreat in a Caribbean island and then actually become part of the travel business at a provider level in the Caribbean. So what is it that makes the difference on this? It really has to do with how we show up for ourselves first, which also impacts how we show up for others. If I show up for others exclusively, then I'm not taking care of myself. And there is a cycle or a circle in this whole thing that really is what I think we should all be talking about is what is your relationship to self and others, and how does money fill the gap, or maybe that's not even the right phrase. How does money balance that whole thing out? So, do we want to just survive, or do we want to thrive? And what's the difference between the two? If I'm in a fear-based state, I'm afraid somebody's going to walk away and go to Expedia. I'm in a fear-based state. I'm in survival mode. If I'm in thriving mode, I'm operating in a place where it's like, okay, they might walk away. That's on them. It's not on me. I know my value. I know who I am. I know what I can bring to the table. I know that they've presumed something different. It's on them. That's not on me. And so I can just go, okay, fine. The universe will bring me somebody else. There's so much business out there. Now, interesting times we live in. Travel's not exactly the highest profile thing on the planet. However, this is all temporary. 7 out of 10 people, if you ask them what they want to do with their lives, almost everybody will say, if I had nothing but time on my hands, I would travel. I don't think that has changed.
No, it hasn't.
So if that's the case, we're right now we're in the middle of bracing ourselves for better times, feast and famine type of thing. But that doesn't mean we can't thrive in the process. We can do work on ourselves while we're hunkering down. We can provide ancillary services for people that may be different kinds of travel, maybe more virtualized, maybe more whatever. So I'm not here to create the spaces for your industry. I am just going to say is that our relationship with money is really dependent on our relationship with ourselves. And it really has to do with, what do we want? Do we want money? Do we want happiness? Do we want a harmony of the two? And if we do, then we need to focus on ourselves first.
So would you say that that every entrepreneur should be sort of self-diagnosing themselves as they get into setting up a business, or if they're studying their business and saying, wow, this thing's going nowhere? Do you think that the solution probably resides in this kind of self-work that I hear you hinting at?
Yeah. Well, the core of my work, sometimes I say it this way, the core of my work is helping people get out of survival jail. And the premise that I work with, and it's been very successful, is that we release those stories in ourselves, including limiting beliefs, some limiting decisions we may have adopted a long time ago, and fears. We release those things so that we can go to a state of thriving. And once we're thriving, our purpose and meaning in life becomes more clear. Our passion is amplified immensely. The energy that comes from those two things is just astounding. So we end up having increased power over everything about us. So that's the authentic story. And that authentic story isn't something we need to create. It's always inside of us, waiting to be revealed if it's not already exposed and revealed. The challenge being is those other stories dominate. So it could be, we don't do that in this household because we never have enough money. We don't plan trips because we never have enough money, or something might go wrong. You've got these things, and I'm creating a voice for somebody who's probably not so pretty in their personality. But the idea is that those kinds of limiting voices can be passed down into children, and then when they grow up, they carry those voices, even if they don't even realize they're not their own, but they are not their voices, because deep down inside, there's a person here, whether they're working on the travel industry or something like that. But if there's a deep down inside, if I love travel and I love helping other people travel, and that's my passion, and I can now ratchet that up to 2 or 3 magnitudes because I find even a better version of myself, imagine the power that I have to work with people. And then people are going to see that power, and they're going to want to be just forking over money hand and fist to work with me, because they know they're going to have an experience with me, whereas everybody else is just going to have someplace to go. So in order for that to happen, we have to start looking at money as the cause, or money is the reason. We have to start looking at it as strictly a byproduct of being the very best person we are today. And if we're not the very best person we can be, let's put ourselves on the road to doing that. It's not that challenging. Your only other thing that you mentioned here that I wanted to just put a quick thought on here is let's do a self-evaluation. That's easier said than done many times. Well, and going back to this, is the core of my work is about doing this in a very rapid and permanent way too. Like, it's not very good if, let's say we were in the travel space and we want to like really become even more powerful as a travel player in the industry. And I have to spend 4 years on the couch talking to a therapist. That's not a good place to be.
No. But what I'm hearing from you, I think, is that if you're trying to think about your business from an objective standpoint, you're putting together a business plan. You're going to try to be focused on creating an ideal client and understanding how much they should be paying you, and what does that income look like over a 12-month plan, and forecast it out 3 years, and you're serious, you're going to be a business owner, then you better know who that person is setting all of that up, because if those numbers are based on someone other than who you really are, you're going to find yourself frustrated.
Yeah, and probably withdrawing into that survival mode, which is a very uncomfortable place to be.
It is.
And very often, wouldn't it be interesting? Maybe I have this really powerful, dynamic idea. I create a business plan. I launch myself into the industry. I have made all the proper connections to make that happen. I may even be fairly clear about what those connections should look like and where I can be working with people. Maybe my specialty is Disney or whatever I've been doing to set myself up as, even with some of the right ideas like differentiation and things like that. And then I fall back into survival mode because something didn't quite work right. And now I'm in survival mode. Then I might be filling that hole of doubt and self-worth and all those other things, which I may not have climbed through yet. And it's now inserting itself into the equation, which affects everything, including my relationship with money.
Right. So I'm going to let you I'm going to give you like a 2 to 3 minute description of me, and I'm curious to hear what you think about my relationship with money. So
you're going to put me on the spot like this?
You can't hurt my feelings. Don't worry about it. We've known each other for too long.
I'm just teasing you anyway.
So I grew up the son of an entrepreneur. Never worked for a corporation. He was a carpenter in the union on the docks in Brooklyn until he, finally decided that wasn't going to make him enough money, and he buys this lumberyard with his brother out in Suffolk County. And my Italian parents, crazy Italian parents, go out and have 9 kids. So there was a big need to work hard and earn lots of money. And, I wasn't there or maybe I was very, very young when my father was still a carpenter, and he would come home late in the evenings, from his jobs. But there was a lack of money naturally in a house of 9 children. We lived well. I mean, my father was one of those, GI Bill guys who bought a house out in the potato farms of Long Island, and, suburban lifestyle. Wife got to stay home full time. But we were never wealthy people. Doesn't mean we had crappy cars. My father always, would have a decent car in the house, and we took vacations on a fairly regular basis. And Most of us went to college without any loans to pay off. So there was almost like a Protestant ethic about money. You work hard to earn it. Later in life, once the kids and their tuitions weren't weighing heavily on mom and dad, they started traveling quite a bit, and they traveled well. They didn't stay, they went to Italy, they went to, Europe, and they spent money on themselves. My father eventually bought himself a 450 Mercedes-Benz, big, huge gold Mercedes-Benz, not a casino gold, more of a muted type of gold colored Mercedes-Benz. He finally started indulging in himself. And so that's the environment I grew up in. Take a guess what you think my relationship is with money and how I bill for my services. And
well, you and I know each other a little bit more, I guess we'll say intimately than most people do in that regard. So I have some advanced information to a degree, plus what you just shared with me. And then I also have what I'll call my observations, hey, what's really going on here type of thing. And inside of this question you're asking is what is your relationship with money? And I took a whole lot of stuff here is that you need to work hard for your money. You need to bust your butt before you can indulge. There's a few other things. So some of these things actually may end up becoming forms of limiting belief. That I'm not suggesting that's the full forbearance of how you're living your life with regard to money.
That's pretty accurate.
And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't be working diligently on being effective and true and providing real value. That's the whole point, is providing real value. The question is energetically, where are you leveraging? This is the truth of any business, by the way. So let's just talk business for a minute here. Since I've had my almost 5 decades of entrepreneurial behavior here, where are you leveraging your time so that you're not trading time for money exclusively? This is, I think, something that everybody in the travel industry has got a challenge with, right? Is the people who have the most leverage are the ones who are able to invest in things and let those things make them money.
Yes.
So maybe they have a hotel, maybe they have a resort property, maybe they have an Airbnb or something to that effect. So where else can you leverage? What is the leverage all about? The challenge being here is that some of the leverage needs to come from inside. You need to leverage your belief more than anything else and anything we ever do. You need to leverage your belief in your worth. You need to leverage your belief that money is merely an energy that we can manifest for ourselves. That money is not necessarily a product of pure only hard work. That, yes, hard work may be part of how we provide real value. However, why can't we replicate that energy? Why can't we spend it in or attract it in different ways so that we have abundance of it without regard to it only be committed to how much time we have in the day? And there's power in this thing. So what can anybody in the travel space do if right now they're stuck in that cycle of, and frankly, it's kind of a crappy cycle to be in with the times, is if I'm a commissioned only salesperson working in the travel space, I'm probably looking for other work right now, even if I'm just using the other work to hold down the fort until that returns, because I love what I do. Right now, how much of it can I really do? Excuse me, I apologize for the cough, folks. So the idea here is leverage in our investments or other things, but first, leveraged investment is in your heart. If you can bring your heart to the business, your business will grow, and it will grow substantially. Second leverage thing is then you take some of the byproduct of that first leverage and invest it in other ways, so that by the time you've been in this industry 5-10 years, your issue with money is non-existent. If you have any issues, if your concerns about cash flow were there in the beginning, you won't have that again. In fact, you will have such a rocky experience today, trading that for an extremely powerful experience down the future. by doing true investment in yourself and in your heart. That's what I've been. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. It doesn't matter what the business is. It doesn't matter whether it's an individual trying to transform or somebody trying to transform a business. At every level, it starts with investing in your heart in such a way that you have built something that is connecting to people at the heart level. Businesses need that in order to actually thrive. I forget about survival. A lot of businesses are going away today because they were so hell-bent on surviving. The ones that are going to make it are the ones that had invested in thriving.
See, and we're going to have to end in a couple of minutes. And now I'm starting to kind of understand where you're coming from. And I know quite a few people who know me, who've watched me, do these kind of interviews. They know that we talk about mindset all the time. That if you feel, powerful, if you're, stepping into your brilliance, and that's the place that you're just so happy because you're doing who you are, you're being who you are, that's what attracts people to come to you and then say, I want to spend money with you. I mean, I teach, that's what I teach in our master classes, in our business accelerator classes. You got to go find that person first and fall in love with them. If you're already in love with them, fantastic. We'll move on to the next step. But if you haven't fallen in love with that person, it's going to be really hard for customers who want to pay you ridiculous sums of money to fall in love with you too.
Right. Well, I'm not a big fan of the word mindset. Just want to put this on the table before we disband our connection here.
Okay.
The reason why I'm not a big fan of mindset is because the dominant part of our lives is heart set. If you really want to affect your mindset, you start with the heart set. That's why I said before, you've got to invest in your heart. You got to invest in being a whole, vibrant, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy person, which does allow us to have external persona. So I'm not suggesting we don't curate an image. It's just the image has to be connected to the true version of who you are and not a pretend version of who you are.
Right.
And so if you really want to change your mindset, start with your heart.
Yes. And for me, I know to me, it's more semantics. When I hear mindset, I'm thinking the mind in that reference is a reflection of, this holistic soul, this greater being. It's not just your brain and your neurons. So I understand where you're coming from. I think we're thinking the same thing though.
Right. Invest in the heart and the mind will follow. That's the most powerful thing we can do for ourselves, is to, for our business, for our families, for our relationship with money.
Yes. And with that, we're going to have to sign off. I mean, I feel like we're just starting to get below the surface here.
If it works for you and your audience, I'm happy to come back and
thinking we're going to have to do that at some point. Yes. Brian, as always, finally I got to interview you. I'm glad I got to put the shoes on the other feet for the first time. Thank you so much. You are always a person who pushes me towards my edges and forces me to have, I don't want to say confrontational because that's maybe a negative image, a probing, look into my motivations and, exactly how I do what I do and why. And that gift alone was worth the last 60 minutes.
And I appreciate your sharing your energy with me, because as you know, I learn from every engagement we have. I don't think we have time to go through everything I've learned, because the learning is always immensely powerful.
Yes.
And the takeaway from here was just huge. Thank you.
Great. Well, sir, we need to just catch up personally at some point. So I'll see if you're doing nothing over the weekend, and maybe we can get 60 minutes on the phone just to talk that way.
Fantastic.
Take care, Brian. Good to see you.
Keep well.
Stay well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.